Good afternoon. My name is Jaleel Ross. I am an Andrew Goodman Foundation's Vote Everywhere Ambassador at Xavier University of Louisiana in New Orleans, Louisiana. And I will be moderating this panel called The Power, we're going to be talking about the power of music in many social movements in decades past and in the present. My panelists today are Mollie Farrell, Sienna Jackson, and Michelle Edgar. Before we get into the questions, I'm going to give each of our panelists a brief minute to introduce themselves and their background, starting with Mollie.
Hi everyone, I'm Mollie Farrell. I'm the Director of Artist Relations at HeadCount, a voter registration nonprofit. We partner with talent to help get their audiences registered to vote and get people easy access to the polls. For the past 2.5 years, I've been a part of the team designing campaigns for different artists. And then prior to that, I worked in live music production. So it's a great opportunity to take what I learned in the music industry and translate it to impact work.
And next we'll hear from Sienna.
Hi, thank you for having me today. My name is Sienna Jackson. I'm the CEO and founder of Zoran Creative Strategy, a social impact consulting firm. Before that, I also had a background in the music industry, 10 years, music, film, and television. And I think there is like Mollie said, there is an intersection between working in social impact and the music industry, which I love to explore.
And last but not least, we'll hear from Michelle.
Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle. I'm the founder and executive director of Music Unites. We are a nonprofit that empowers youth through music, and we fund after-school music education programs. We also created the Music Versities program. We currently have a Music Versity virtual academy for students for the next 2 weeks, but our mission through Music Versities to empower students by turning them on to careers in the music business, by learning from industry leaders and artists, top leaders in the business. And I also am an executive VP over at Epic Records. And my job as brand marketing executive is to align our artists with brands and create authentic, impactful campaigns. So I work across all different types of brands and my artists, their causes. It's always great when you find that authentic alliance and really empower, messages through, meaningful initiatives and campaigns.
Great. Again, I want to thank all of you guys for taking the time out of your very busy schedules to be here with us today. It's our pleasure to have you guys. My first question, the kind of general question I want to ask, what role do you all think music has played in the many social movements of today and of yesterday? And I'm gonna start with Sienna.
This is a question actually that has bedeviled me my entire career. I've been working in music now, a little over 10 years. And I've had this conversation with artists, I've had this conversation with executives. I think even Michelle and I have probably had this conversation in the past. Music is always going to be important to political and social movements. It is always going to be, I think, one of the best, if not just the absolute best medium for translating political frustrations, for translating the feelings of the people in the moment and reflecting the present moment. I think this idea of, where's our Bob Dylan, where's our great anthem that's going to lead the revolution? I don't think that music has to operate in the culture the way it did, say, during the civil rights movement of the 1960s, because, American society has changed since that time. So why shouldn't music's role in social justice and in politics and in activism change with the times as well? So I think having that one-to-one comparison of why doesn't music operate in culture the way it did in the 60s compared to now, I don't think that is maybe the most productive question. It's more, how does music engage with young people today? You look at how music goes viral, a lot of it is through platforms, social media platforms like TikTok or whatever. And a song can become the anthem of an idea, it can become viral, it can become a meme unto itself, and you can almost use it as a cultural hieroglyph, right, to translate an idea or translate a feeling. So the way that music operates with young people is different than how it operated with young people in the 60s and 70s, because the culture has changed, technology has changed, communication and what we're trying to get across with music is different than it was then.
Mollie or Michelle, do you guys have anything to add?
I can add, I think Sienna really hit it perfectly, but music is the universal language. It is so impactful. It's something that everyone just can resonate and understand. So I think it's great, the references that Sienna pulled across history. But I think it's exciting to see with these new platforms how quick certain messages and music and songs can break, especially TikTok during these times has been a very impactful platform for our artists. And, it's exciting to see where, the times that we're living in with so much pivoting and transformation happening and leading up to voting, that I'm really excited to see how, artists really come to the forefront and use their platforms to really impact change, because these next few months are really pivotal in all of our history.
My next question is for Mollie. In terms of speaking out on these various societal issues, do you think music has had more of an impact today or in decades before? It's kind of like an offshoot of what Sienna just said when I asked her the first question. So do you think music was more impactful today or in like the many social movements of decades before us?
I think it's interesting that folks tend to romanticize, what the music that came out of the civil rights movement and came out of the Vietnam War protests, around the 60s and 70s. And like you were saying, Sienna, people are like, where's our Bob Dylan? But there are so many movements happening currently that are just, there's no This Is America by Childish Gambino, FDT by YG. Like, these are all super relevant messages that are happening right now, but there's a multimedia focus now, which is great. And so I think it's combining that like left brain and right brain. Whereas like maybe when you're looking in the 60s and 70s, like it was key for distributing information. But now that we have information at our fingertips constantly, we're able to bring more like creative aspects into sort of translate these messages at every facet, and it not just be totally intellectual or, statistics. It brings in a whole nother era of creative, involvement in these conversations.
Definitely. My next question is directed to Michelle. Without music, do you think these movements would have been as successful as they have been?
I think music, it's two different things, right? So, having certain things happen in history and culture, they happen in life. So I think music is that powerful like microphone to, impact change and mobilize and get people even deeper in that. So sometimes it's used for action. There are different purposes that music it could be for healing. It could be for different, I think it's an additive, incentive to really mobilize movements. So I don't think it's just, of course it makes it better because, it's something that's so tangible. You hear that song, when you first heard it, where you were. It's just something that really hits a chord and it hits home hard. So it really can resonate and tell a story very well. But I think, things happen in history with or without music, but together when it's paired with moments that are so historic, it just magnifies the whole message.
Right. And I agree. My next question is for Mollie. Why do you think music, as opposed to other forms of artistic expression, have been at the forefront of most social movements? Like as opposed to like paintings or, film or things like that?
That's a really interesting question. I think for a lot of folks, it's a really accessible medium. Like it's constant everywhere. And we know the power that it has on a vibrational level. You add in lyrics, like music itself can be powerful, but then you add in the poetry of it all. And I think that it can just speak to people in a way that other mediums might not. You also look at radio and music back when we're looking at the 60s and 70s, and then music distribution now and how easy it is for us to listen to whatever we want at a moment's notice. I think it's a faster way to translate messages and it's more active, whereas other forms of art might be a little more passive and up to interpretation.
Right. I think another reason, I agree with that, and I think another reason is because like the ease of interpretation. Because like you can look at like a painting or something like that, and like one person might see something different or get a different message You know, it might not even be the message that the artist intended to send, but music is so easily interpreted because like the artist is saying what they actually mean to say. And like a lot of times music represents the times that we're going, so everybody already has that recognition of what is happening. So I think that's why music is so easily like used to, you know, portray certain messages and send, you know, certain ideas. My next question is for all of you. How do you think censorship has affected the way the messages of musicians are presented to the masses? And do you think this censorship affects social movements in any way? We're going to start with Sienna on that one.
I mean, I was about to turn to Michelle virtually and be like, I mean, from the label perspective, we can have a very deep conversation. I think it's interesting that one thing that has changed about the music industry is that it's conglomerates now. We've seen the folding in of independent labels into these massive multinational corporations, right? So if most of the music in the world is owned by essentially 3 companies, how does that impact the artistic output of artists? But on the other side of it, right, the music industry has become actually very democratized through the internet. Anyone in their bedroom can record their own album, get their message out there. It's just a question of whether or not they can cut through the noise, right? Because it's a very hyper-saturated market. Like the music industry, you know, in some ways has never been stronger. There's never been more amazing music for you to access. Like I love SoundCloud. I love listening to bedroom artists. I love listening to international artists because then you get a glimpse into what's going on, what the conversation is on the streets on the other side of the planet. So I think in terms of censorship, perhaps major artists feel a pressure, but I kind of want to hear Michelle's thoughts on this. Perhaps major artists feel a pressure to curb their language in order to satisfy some sort of bottom line, but I don't think so. I don't think that we're in a period of censorship in art, or at least that's not what I'm seeing when I listen to music as a consumer. I'm not seeing censorship.
I think artists have to be authentic to their voices. And, you know, it's not like we can really control what the artist's lyrics are or what they're feeling. And, you know, you can't tell specific artists like Kendrick Lamar to think about censorship. So, you know, working with some of the biggest artists around the world, from Travis Scott, you know, to Future, you know, censorship. Yes, I think like certain things on air and television, there's certain rules and regulations. And, you know, I think that's one thing. But in music, I think it's something that, you know, really breaks down all barriers, and there's no, you know, control over what an artist is writing or feeling or saying. And if there were, then you would really not be authentic to their voice. So I think that, you know, the truth and the beauty of music is that it comes from the heart, and it's what the artist pours their, you know, they sort of sculpt the entire song. So I don't believe that there's specific, you can't tell an artist or control censorship. I think, you know, for specific purposes, yes, on television.
Right. Mollie, would you have anything to add?
I discovered recently that the origins of Rock the Vote in 1990 came from Jeff Aroff responding to censorship that was happening in the rap and hip hop communities. After the Rodney King riots, there were a ton of songs that were written and performed that were not being distributed. And he took this frustration and he directed it towards Rock the Vote, and their first campaign was "Censorship is Un-American." And so it was really amazing to see, like, that was the first of like civic engagement and voter registration becoming a part of the cultural zeitgeist. And so its origins are in censorship, which I think is pretty fascinating.
My last question, it's a 2-part question, really. Outside of creating music to represent the times, what can musicians do to mobilize their listeners to become more civically engaged? Not just through voting, but through, like, you know, other forms of activism in their communities. Because I know we see artists like Killer Mike and T.I. or even Talib Kweli who speak out on certain issues and like push for their listeners to get out and vote. Or not just in presidential elections, but they focus on like local elections and people like to vote for politicians who will actually like affect their everyday life. So my main question is really, what can musicians do like to they're not on like, not even such a big name artists, but like, you know, people on like the SoundCloud and the bedroom artists that Sienna speaks of. Like, what can those artists do to mobilize their listeners? And I'm gonna start with Michelle on that one.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our artists over at Epic Records are really voicing and, you know, communicating directly and, you know, empowering their fans who are listening to them and look up to them to really take action. So I think the more action oriented, like for these artists who you're talking about, you know, everyone has a voice, you know, especially if you're an artist. So to figure out what your campaign and strategy around, you know, mobilizing your fans and those listening to you, you know, you don't have to, we all have voices, you know, so really thinking about the time frame of what's coming up and how we want to engage and communicate effectively to those people. And you can see it with our artists. I mean, so many of our artists have, you know, 21 Savage is passionate about financial literacy. He has his own foundation. G Herbo is really passionate about mental awareness. You know, so many of our artists from, you know, Future to Tyler Yahweh, they're passionate about voting. So you're gonna, Madison Beer, they're all starting to organically, in their best voice, start expressing what they're feeling and encouraging their fans to vote. So as you said, right now there are no barriers and, you know, no boundaries, Sienna, where people are, there's, you know, people are really, it's quite raw and putting it out there because change has to come, and this is the only way to test and really mobilize our fans and those listening to us.
Next, I'll hear Sienna's thoughts on this question.
Yeah, because, you know, Michelle and I have known each other for a couple of years just through the music industry, and we also do really amazing work together with Music Unites and Musicversity. So this question of how artists can engage, the way I always like to frame it is it's about building coalition, right? So I do a lot of work with activists, nonprofits, and creatives. You identify people who are in your space who can, you know, jump on board with you if you have a cause that you really care about, you know, and, you know, let's focus on voting rights. Let's focus on civic engagement. You know, we're a country that is very non-participatory in our democracy on every level, from the federal all the way down to local. So if you're an artist, say, and you don't have a huge platform, you don't have a huge social media following, but you do have a community around you, a creative community, your own neighborhood. When you walk outside or you look at your neighborhood, you have space and community, and that is your purview. That's your sphere of influence. That's where you can start building an operation, right? It doesn't have to be like, what is the one thing that I can do that's going to change the game nationally? No, keep the focus local. Look at home, look in your own community. If you're someone who wants to roll up your sleeves and do good work, think about building coalition. Look at an issue. Ask yourself, who in that space is doing good work that I admire? And then you go to those people and you say, how can I help you from the perspective of where I'm coming at? So if you're coming from the perspective of an artist, you can create revolutionary art that translates the reality of what you see in your own backyard. And that's really the start, right? Like all great organizing, all great grassroots movements, you know, look at the times that we're in right now. Everything you're seeing on the news that is a national story, I know some of those activists. They've been in the trenches for decades, unrecognized, but doing the work every day. And that's, I think, the mindset that young people and artists and all of us have to get into is, you know, you get up every day, you roll up your sleeves and you do the work where you're able. Do the work where it's at for you. And it's an additive effect. Every little thing that you can do to make a difference in the world adds to the movement. It builds upon the efforts of others. And that's how you kind of get that, you know, that multiplication effect, right? So even if you are coming from like a small place as an artist or as just a person in your community, those little things that you can do, the things that you can build with the people around you, that's what's going to really uplift folks, and it's going to have a big impact. You'd be surprised how things can scale, especially with the internet, especially with the tools we have at our disposal now. That's kind of how I feel. Build coalition, build community, keep it local, expand.
I also agree with that. I think, I think one thing that to realize that, and I think my generation is starting to realize that there is like power in numbers, and like we can get a lot of things done if we like attach ourselves to that sense of community, you know? I'd like to hear Mollie's thoughts on that.
Yeah, Sienna, to your point, like understanding your audience and your community and the needs that need to be met, that's the first step. It's not enough to just tell people to go register to vote, because it's not easy for a lot of people. It's not just a simple option. Like understanding what the barriers to entry are for the different groups that you are surrounded with, that you make music for, that you interact with, that you live with, like that is what's key. And I think we're seeing, you know, so many, I'll leave it at that, but yeah.
And the second part of this question, I know we talked about what musicians can do to mobilize their listeners, but on the other hand, what can listeners do to even become more civically engaged if they're not already civically engaged themselves? And I'll start with Mollie on that one again.
Yeah, I mean, plugging into the issues that the artists you follow care about, and really understanding. I mean, I think it's pretty easy to skip like a link in bio or suggested swipe up, but like putting the extra effort towards like doing the research and understanding like why is this artist that I'm a fan of so passionate about this stuff. Something that one of the artists we partner with did, his name is Grandson, and this is like available to all artists at any level. Put a text code in the title of all of his songs on a mixtape that he released. So it's, you know, title of the song, parentheses, text voter XX to 40649. And when you do that, you're given like a register to vote link and a way to sign up for election alerts and things like that. So just going the extra step, like taking the 2 minutes to really spend some time researching these things, it just helps you have a holistic understanding of the issues that all Americans face and not just the people in your own community.
We'll hear from Michelle next.
Yeah, I think, you know, for an artist to just really think about what their cause is and be authentic to it. You know, like there's so many, as Mollie said, there's so many great, you know, voting initiatives going on right now. So, you know, tapping into fabulous, you know, resources, and, you know, if there are anybody watching, you know, the students, reach out to Sienna, Mollie, myself. You know, if you're interested, everyone can make a change. So, you know, being able to go to experts like Sienna and Mollie who are in this space and say, well, this is what I'm looking to do. What would really resonate? This is where I'm coming from. This is what I want to accomplish. So really understanding the goals, because there's a lot of different sides of impacting change around voting, or I know that's our approach to music education. When I started Music Unites, I wanted to make a difference in music education. I knew that that's what I wanted to fund and create best-in-class after-school music education programs for inner-city kids who don't have access to music. There's around, you know, 20 great, you know, music education nonprofits. So, you know, you have to really understand and do your due diligence as to where you think you can make the most contribution and impact, and then identify those organizations or those leaders who are leading the charge doing that kind of work on a local level, because it is the boots in the ground who are working in the community. You know, we have a very unique partnership with the Compton Unified School District. We've been working in Compton for over 10 years. We started an orchestra there, and we're building out these music academies. So you have to really understand and see what it is and how you want to make an impact and change. So I think that, yeah.
No, I mean, from the perspective, if you're a young person, first of all, the fact that you're here engaging with this event, with this summit, and you're interested in civic engagement, you're already on the path. You're already making the right choices. I have nothing but abiding faith in young people, you know, Generation Z. They're already cluing in and they're tuning in to what's important. They're already taking the time and the effort to educate and consciousness raise around different issues. But when it comes to civic engagement, remember, you know, I know what we are dealing with in this present moment is very daunting. I know it must be, you know, it can be overwhelming and stressful and exhausting when you turn on the news and you look at what's going on. But, you know, I'm speaking as someone who's, you know, 27. I'm not very old myself. I am very hopeful about the future. I'm very I'm very trusting in, you know, my fellow Americans that we are going to make positive change in our society and in our nation. And the first way to do that is by flexing your vote. Flex your right to vote. Take ownership of the future of our society. Know that the power at the end of the day is in your hands, because you can decide. You can get up and decide to engage. You can get up and decide to reach out to others with questions. You can get up and choose to build community and build coalition and cast your ballot. All the power really is in your hands. You just need to act on it and follow through and understand that, you know, social activism, engagement, civic engagement, being a good citizen, it's a lifelong endeavor. It is a process. It's not, here is the checklist to be a perfect activist. Here's the checklist to change the world and make it a better place. It's a long haul thing. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. You're going to make affirmative choices every day, big and small, in your life that will forward that mission.
Thank you. You have anything to add, Mollie?
I will make a quick plug for anyone who's looking for volunteer opportunities in this time, particularly related to the election. Headcount.org/volunteer. We have digital volunteer opportunities available. We have some community field stuff in places where it is safe to go out and socially distance and register voters and get the community educated. And then we're asking people, young people, to sign up to become poll workers. We know that it's going to be very essential this election, so we'll have more information about that on our website, headcount.org, but do a little research with your Department of Elections and check out being a poll worker.
Thank you.
I'd like to chime in too, Mollie. That was great, because we love students who are looking to make a difference, and we have opportunities with our organization too, with Music Unites. So reach out to myself or Sienna through, you know, our Instagram, so @music_unites. We'd love to have you guys join our virtual academy, share it with your friends. We have, you know, almost 500 students signed up, so spread the word. We'd love to have you experience it firsthand. And if you're interested in seeing how you can contribute and want to get your feet wet, please reach out to us, because we'll always find opportunities for smart students to, you know, really get their feet wet in the philanthropy space.
Thank you. Now I think we can just close out with some final thoughts from each of you guys.
My thoughts are, you know, find strong mentors. When I started my nonprofit when I was 25 years old, I had no background in philanthropy, how to make a difference. I kind of always knew I was a change agent wanting to make impact. And I wanted to directly see and feel where those funds are going and make sure that the programs were set up the right way, because I knew the power of music in my life, because my parents gave everything they had towards my music education. And I know how that transformed. It built the strongest foundation for my life and my career. And I wanted to offer students that same sort of opportunity. So I firmly believe in mentorship. And I wouldn't have been able to get Music Unites off the ground. And even in my career, if I didn't find strong people that I really looked up to, and asked for help. I did my due diligence. I figured out smart ways to, you know, reach out to them, tell them how much I appreciate, admired them. You know, we're at a day and age where information is at your disposal. When I started a nonprofit, I think I looked up, you know, how to start a nonprofit for dummies. I think like I literally just Googled like, you know, what are the first steps in setting up a nonprofit? And there they were. And that's how I began. And then I started reaching out to other people I really respected, and, you know, take advantage of this opportunity and this time to see how you can really contribute, because I think everyone has a little more time to reflect right now and make a difference. So don't be afraid to ask who would be the right mentor. Think about it. Think about who inspires you and motivates you in life. So just, you know, there's a lot of information. So use this time wisely and strategize, because then that's where the magic unfolds as you grow and you go on your journey.
Sienna, do you have anything to add?
Sure. I guess for folks in music, for artists, we need your voices. be fearless, be experimental, tell us how you feel, because this is just an unprecedented time, and it's going to take decades for us to really get a handle on 2020, which is collectively the worst year of all of our lives in a lot of ways, but also a very hopeful year, because maybe we can make change in ways that even 2 years ago would have seemed inconceivable. We're having conversations now that we wouldn't have dared to be having. And I think that is remarkable. We're living in a remarkable moment. For any young person who is listening to this, each of you have something unique to offer to the world and to society and to culture in so many capacities. Everyone has a unique capacity to get involved. Everyone has a unique capacity to do good in the world and to be good to others and to make something of themselves. And your path is going to take you in your own unique direction. And the things that you do that contribute good are going to be unique to you. So identify those things within yourself that are special. Ask yourself, what are the things that I can do just by being myself that can make a difference in the world? And once you kind of identify what makes you unique, then you can find your unique path to doing good and to getting engaged. But also vote. Just vote up and down the ballot and vote in every local election, because change starts in your backyard.
Right. I just want to thank you guys for joining us. This was a very insightful panel, and I'm glad I had the time to talk to you guys. And that's it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.